Is this so?
Yes, I see no reason that the Senate at this point should proceed with impeachment proceedings where such a procedure at this point, it seems to me, clearly would violate Senator Weaver's right to a fair trial by a jury of his peers in Talladega County. I know of no precedent in the decided cases of the Alabama Supreme Court or of the United States Supreme Court which would require that the Senate would initiate impeachment proceedings, particularly where, as here, the charges do not arise out of Senate activities prior to the time that a criminal trial can be held. The charges and the publication of those charges by the Attorney General, I think, have led to a situation where Mr. Weaver is presumed to be guilty by virtue of the accusations, and I don't think that's what the criminal justice system in this country is all about.
The House Ways and Means Committee today failed to take up the Special Education Trust Fund budget as proposed by Governor Wallace. Tomorrow, elementary and secondary education, along with higher education, will try to come to some type of agreement as to how the governor should spend education money.
One bill was a doctor copay bill. When a Medicaid patient goes to a physician, it costs that patient $1. In the past, we think a number of patients have gone to the doctor mostly because they wanted attention. This has worked with pharmaceuticals, and we think it'll work to save the state money with doctors. Another bill is it's illegal for people to divest themselves of their assets to become eligible for Medicaid. It does have a period of 1 year, divestiture, and then 1 year waiting period before eligibility. It does make it a $1,000 fine for anybody to advise them to do this. Another bill is it allows the state to step in as a third party to recoup money that has been falsely claimed under Medicaid. In other words, the state can stand in the shoes of an individual, or rather the Medicaid program, to recover. Fourth bill is that it makes it a crime to falsify a claim, and there's a penalty up to 5 years imprisonment or up to $1,000 fine for falsifying a claim against Medicaid. And then the fifth bill is it gives civil immunity against the State Board of Census or any of the agents of state that bring suit against any provider or recipient in court.
Back during last year, I chaired a committee that studied the Alabama Dairy Commission's its functions, and there's a lot of good things about the Dairy Commission, and most of this committee was for the Dairy Commission. But one of the things that we really wanted to do was to take the minimum off of milk in Alabama, because we did see that some of our other states, surrounding states, such as Mississippi and Florida, had lower milk prices. Well, here in Alabama, the minimum, the lowest price that a gallon of milk can be sold for is $1.74 per gallon. So all we're doing, we're just requesting. In other words, this resolution, all it does is request that the minimum be taken off of milk and let the stores in Alabama sell it for what they want to as far as supply and demand.
Differences in the House bill, the Senate bill, and then what the conference committee recommends. I'll what you have in your possession now.
call on the legislature of the state to go ahead and pass a budget. I don't like the budget that we have worked out with the conference committee for the simple reason that it doesn't look adequately after the prison systems, after the parks, after those who draw on the Medicaid, who are looked after, who are sick and disabled. But on the other hand, we must have a budget. And I will have to accept a budget that I'm not satisfied with because I cannot always have my way. If everyone would do their constitutional duty as required under the Constitution of Alabama, we would have no problem. But since the year 1971, we find that there seems to be some who are involved in the process who wants to go beyond their constitutional duties. And I feel that if we would get back to everyone doing what the Constitution requires of them to do as officers of this state, we would not have the failure to acquire budgets as we have seen in the last several years. They've taken money away from the elderly, blind, handicapped, and sick on the Medicaid and old age pension programs, ADC programs, and transferred it over to pay high pensions for judges in Alabama and other public officials. And as a consequence, this money has been taken away from those who need it most.
The governor said to offer executive amendments to the budget might kill the budget and result in costing several $100,000 to the taxpayers. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News, the governor's office.
Mr. Owen, Mr. Pearson, Mr. Perloff, Mr. Perry, Mr. Powell, Mr. Roberts, Mr. St. John, Mr. Shelby, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Talbot,
Six. Mr. President, I'll request unanimous consent to bring up House Bill 2.
I'm going to object. We're about to drop the gavel to end this session, and I think it ought to end the way we started out filibustering, not me. I think it was Senator Baker that started.
Midnight, and the House is adjourning at midnight, and we've reached the sine die hour.
Thank you, Mr.
President.
President.
Young Waller.
I move that this legislature stand in adjournment, sine die.
Questions on Senator Wilson's motion to stand in adjournment, sine die. All in favor, signify aye. All opposed, no.
And I would like
Ayes
to
have it
say,
unanimously.
and I would like to say that before the next budget bills pass in February of 1977, we'll need several resolutions to not take up any legislation or any confirmations, Mr. Chief Justice. And there'll be several long days.
All in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, unanimous. I'm sorry, but coming up to be very careful and not affecting a lot of Alabama. Later on,
The best session that we'd had in probably recent times in Alabama. We passed a great deal of significant legislation, bills like the Sunset Bill, the Fiscal Management Bill, portions of the prison reform package, both major budgets without any new taxes, and today the Senate, for example, passed over 75 general bills in addition to probably 100 local bills, and the special education bill was passed, which brings in now the severely retarded children under the Special Education Act. And by and large, there was a great deal of meaningful legislation passed, and at the same time there were some bad bills killed prior to the night session, which of course just ended.
Of course, we passed the general fund and the special educational trust fund bills, and of course we did this without any additional taxes, which many said we could not do. We passed some other good legislation. The bond issue to expedite the interstate construction, the Tennessee Tom bond issue that was finally passed today, the Medicaid bills that we think will help to curtail some of the escalating cost of Medicaid in this state. We passed a sound bill to revise some of the budgeting procedures.
And so the first annual session of the Alabama legislature is now history. Quiet has returned to both chambers here at Capitol Hill. They return in February, the first Tuesday, and the Alabama legislature will begin its second annual session. 105 calendar days, 30 legislative days. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News, the state capitol.
That task force pointed to groups where there are large numbers of unregistered persons, and we've asked to
and therefore I either had to cast my lot with someone who lived in Plains, Georgia, who grew up in the same atmosphere that the great overwhelming majority of those of us who believe we know what it is to have seen hard times, or either go with that hierarchy and hold out and have a fight at the convention and wind up with a nominee who did not participate in the primaries or go before the American people. And I thought it would be very unfair, and in the name of fair play, I should do that which I did.